Hello, reporter room friends. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm not on camera today. I am sick, but I am here to do a live stream with you guys because I really want to have this opportunity to connect with you. Today, we're going to be talking about the unknown male DNA found at the crime scene. We're going to be talking about the Tinder warrant and connections to Maddie and Kaylee. We're going to talk about Dylan and Bethany. We're going to talk about the defense expert, Cy Ray. Is the prosecution, they are objecting to his being able to provide an alibi. Is the judge going to prevent Cy Ray from being able to provide an alibi for Bryan Kohberger? And will this force Bryan Kohberger to take the stand? And we're going to talk about those 60 search warrants. And Ann Taylor is claiming now that BK has intellectual difficulties. Is this really going to fly with this particular judge? Being that BK was in a PhD program, he had a master's degree. I'm not sure it's going to qualify him to have intellectual difficulties, but we're going to talk about what Ann Taylor is claiming, and let me hear what you guys have to say about this. As always, Bryan Kohberger is innocent. He is presumed innocent in a court of law until proven guilty. My name is Jessica Davies. I'm an investigative journalist, and my job is to investigate crimes, potential suspects, and crime scenes, and share with you how to consider crime scenes and evidence. Everything I'm sharing with you is my opinion. Please subscribe. It's free, and it helps me out a lot. Please subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up. I'd love to get our thumbs up to 500 thumbs up, and drop me a comment in the comment section below, or come and join me in the top chat. So come on in, tell me where you're from, and thank you so much to our subscribers, our mods. I do see we have a couple of mods in here. Let me see who's in here. I see head mod brother Mike is here, and I see Njaz is here. So me, myself, and I. Njaz, this is so funny, but when I saw you greeting me, myself, and I thought you were like teasing me, saying you were greeting yourself. So that's really, really funny. This is our head mod, Njaz. Our other head mod is brother Mike, and the other one, our other head mod is Amelia. But we have multiple mods. Say hi, Veronica. Oliver Mark is here. He thinks BK is being framed. CJK, hello, good to see you. Please give this a thumbs up on your way in. Hi, PGH Deb, good to see you. Adriana's here, Michelle is here, Pepper's here. Alberica, Alberica believes BK is being framed. Spiritual Mysteries is here. Veronica says, last time I heard his IQ was 117. Yeah, I heard it. I thought it was, I read it was 113, but you might be right, Veronica. But yeah, he has a high IQ. So is this intellectual disabilities? Is that going to fly? Hi, Jewel. Hi, Z06, sorry. ALR is here. Come on in. Tell me where you're from. I'm glad to see you. Top Cat, thank you so much for modding today. Really, really appreciate you guys that are modding. Barbara's here. She was our giveaway winner. Good to see you, Barb. Thank you for modding today, Pepper. Thank you for modding today, Kami. Into the Break says, proof. Will we finally get some evidence against Bryan? Are you sure about that? Yep, I am sure. I feel confident in my reporting. Go for it on the fourth down. Who would frame him and why? Plus, think of all the people who would need to be involved. Yes, you would have to be able to, and Mike says proof, you can read the news. Yep, and I'm going to show you my sourcing on this too. Okay, let's get started, you guys. Come on in. Tell me where you're from. And Mike is here. Thank you so much for modding today, Mike. He says the grand jury went over the evidence. That we've seen the evidence. I mean, there is evidence. There is evidence. You're welcome to come in and share your thoughts on this. If you're just going to be unpleasant, though, I'm probably not going to keep you. Well, it's up to you. Yeah, we're trying to just get stuff done. Okay, all opinions are welcome. Just be respectful in the way that you present them. Let's get started.
Analysis of the cell phone What people have to understand is the cell phone is not like GPS.
That the scientist and the science behind this, when they do match his DNA with the DNA that was found at the crime scene, I think that will be an extremely important piece of evidence. 51% that there was a crime.
This is Reporter Room with Jessica Della Davies.
Hello, Reporter Room investigators. Come on in, come on in. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, we're going to be talking about the Bryan Kohberger case. And oh my gosh, there is so much to unpack here. Not only did Bryan Kohberger do a knife search and a purchase of the knife in March of 2022 from Amazon, but we are now learning that Bryan Kohberger also did a search for the K-bar knife after Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan were all done away with, you guys. This is catastrophic for the defense team, in my opinion. And we're going to talk about Tapatox in just a moment, so please stay with me. My name is Jessica Della. Okay, so let's dig into the new information. Let me just put up an image of Bryan Kohberger. Maybe we should do Maddie today. Yeah, let's do Maddie. Let's do Maddie because I do believe that she was targeted. Okay, so more than 2 years after Maddie, Kaylee, Ethan, and Xana were done away with, the Ada County judge unsealed, we know the transcripts of the recent hearing against Bryan Kohberger, and we have another hearing coming up on April the 9th. So come on in, tell me where we're from. Let's talk about Dylan and Bethany first, and then we're going to talk about that unknown male DNA found at the crime scene, the Tinder warrant and connections to Bryan Kohberger, defense expert Cy Ray, and the 60 other search warrants in just a moment. So please stay with me. We've all heard the 911 call. We don't need to rehash it here. We all have seen the evidence that BK did purchase the K-bar knife on Amazon in March of 2022. We also have confirmation that BK did purchase a ski mask, also called a balaclava mask, and we're waiting to find out about the Dickies receipt from Walmart. Is this going to end up to be a monkey suit or a coverall type of suit that would keep DNA transferring? And on the last live stream, if you have not seen it, you'll want to go through that next. I talk about Bryan Kohberger and his how-to paper. He wrote a how-to paper on how to keep DNA evidence from you're shedding your own DNA to a crime scene. So we are still waiting to see if Buddy the dog links to this case. We know that law enforcement found two animal hairs in his Pullman apartment. We know Bryan Kohberger did not have any animals. So will these link back to Kaylee's dog, Murphy the dog, or will these link back to the Colbert's dog, which was found taken out of his own yard on October the 21st of 2022, just a few minutes away from the 112 King Road home. There's been lots of suspicion in this case because of the defense motion, which was granted by Latah County Judge John's judge to have a gag order put in place. Now, this was put in place, requested by the defense team to protect Bryan Kohberger's right to a fair trial. However, this right to a fair trial has, in my opinion, come at the expense of Dylan and Bethany. Their reputations have been dragged online for 2 years, and they are unable to defend themselves due to the gag order. I'm really thankful, I don't know about you guys, that the 911 call was released. So there's been lots of claims made that there was no evidence in the case also. And again, this is because of the gag order that was put in place by BK's defense team to protect Bryan Kohberger's right to a fair trial. But the new Ada County judge has decided that he wants things to be more transparent. And he has been releasing documents after giving both the prosecution and the defense teams opportunities to redact any information that they don't want the public to see yet. Now, I think this judge is doing a much better job of balancing the public's right to know with Bryan Kohberger's right to a fair trial. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. So let's talk about Cy Ray. And then we're going to talk about the unknown male DNA at the crime scene, the Tinder warrant and connections to Kaylee and Maddie, and then the search warrants in just a moment. So please stay with me. So let's talk about Cy Ray first. Let me grab this. Okay. Cy Ray is claiming that the prosecution is misleading the court because the prosecution was able to get hold of the victim's AT&T records, but not Bryan Kohberger's AT&T records in a timely fashion. And this is being characterized as some type of secret conspiracy. But is this the truth? After reading through both the prosecution motion and the defense motions with you guys during the last live stream, it's apparent that AT&T only keeps cell records. At least this is how they did it back in 2022. They updated it in 2023 for a total of 7 days. Obviously, law enforcement knew who the victims were on November 13th of 2022. They were Ethan, Xana, Kaylee, and Maddie. And 2 of those victims used AT&T as their cell phone service provider, and law enforcement was therefore able to get their cell phone records within the 7 days from AT&T. Now, Ann Taylor and the defense team are claiming that it's different for Bryan Kohberger. And I think this is nonsense, in my opinion. They're claiming that somehow there's a big conspiracy by the prosecution to withhold evidence when the prosecution was not able to turn over BK's AT&T records as quickly as Ann Taylor wanted them. But they were ultimately able to get his records. It just took them more time. And this is because, according to the prosecution, they didn't know who the suspect was, who Bryan Kohberger was, until December 19th of 2022. And so this puts this time frame outside of what AT&T had as their 7-day window back in 2022. So what they're saying is, yes, they did get the information for Bryan Kohberger's phone, but they had to wait. They had to wait. And they turned it over. They got his cell records in 2023, and they were turned over to the defense. Now it's 2025, so I'm not sure. Some people feel like this is, a shady move to call, for question, that it's just kind of smoke and mirrors. That's how the Drunk Turkey Show characterized it. I'm curious what you guys think, but the prosecution is also doing an end run around Cy Ray and Ann Taylor. And I'm, curious what you guys think about this. But what they're saying is that according to Idaho law, and let me pull that up for you guys, on the alibi, they're saying that it does not, Cy Ray is not going to meet the alibi. So let me just share this with you. Let me take this down and put this up instead. Okay. And we talked about, let me take Maddie down for a second. Okay. I am sorry I'm not on camera. I've been sick. And so I'm here. Okay. So this is my sourcing on this is Idaho statute. So this is the state of Idaho and what they require for a defense notice of an alibi. 1, at any time after arraignment, before a magistrate upon a complaint and upon written demand of prosecuting attorney, the defendant shall serve within 10 days or at a different time, as the court may direct, upon the prosecuting attorney, the written notice of his intention to offer a defense alibi. Such notice by the defense shall state the specific place or places at which the defendant claims to have been at the time of the alleged offense and the names and addresses of witnesses upon who he intends to rely on to establish this alibi. Now, the prosecution is arguing that Bryan Kohberger's it hasn't stated a specific place, that Ann Taylor just has him out in the car driving around, and they don't think that Cy Ray should be allowed to testify when they're saying that Bryan Kohberger, this is the prosecution, had his phone switched off during the crimes, and therefore the prosecution is saying that if Bryan Kohberger wants to establish an alibi, then he should get on the stand. So they are trying to completely shut down Cy Ray. What do you guys think about this? So here's number 2. This is what the prosecution is relying on. This is the law, and it's going to not be up to me, not be up to you, not be up to the prosecution or up to the defense. It's going to be up to the judge in this case. But number two, what there's within 10 days after receipt of the defendant's notice of alibi, but in no less than 10 days before the trial, unless the court otherwise directs, the prosecuting attorney shall serve upon the defendant or his attorney a written notice stating the names and addresses of the witnesses upon whom the prosecution intends to rely on to establish the defendant's presence at the scene of the alleged offense and any other witnesses to be relied on to rebut testimony of the defendant's alibi. Now, we know the prosecution are going to rely somewhat on the two roommates, Dylan and Bethany. Dylan says she saw a man dressed all in black with bushy eyebrows that was around 6 feet tall or taller, and that he was athletic but not muscular. And Bethany says she saw a man exiting through the patio doors, dropping things into a paper bag on his way out. Number three, let me make sure I'm like showing you what I'm looking at. Yeah, okay, I am. So this is number three. If prior to a trial, a party learns of an additional witness whose identity, if known, should have been included in the information furnished under subsection 1 or subsection 2 of this section, the party shall promptly notify the other party or his attorneys of the existence and identify such a witness. And this, keeps the state of Idaho from having to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars and seating a jury on a trial if the defendant can just say, yeah, I was at the 7-Eleven, I'm on camera, and my friend Joe was with me. So they're saying that the prosecution is saying that the defense team has not complied with the requirements of this section. So upon failure, this is what the prosecution is that there's a failure. Upon failure of either party to comply with the requirements of this section, the court may exclude the testimony of any undisclosed witness offered by such a party as to the defendant's absence from or presence at the scene of the alleged offense. This section shall not limit the right of the defendant to testify in his own behalf. So what the prosecution is saying is that they don't think that Cy Ray can provide an alibi for Bryan Kohberger because Kohberger's phone was turned off. Let me know what you think. If you think that Cy Ray can provide an alibi for Bryan Kohberger, even though his phone, according to the prosecution, was turned off, put a 1 in the chat. If you think that Cy Ray cannot provide an alibi for Bryan Kohberger because the prosecution is claiming that Bryan Kohberger's cell phone was turned off, put a 2 in the chat. I want to take a temperature on this. But for good cause shown, the court can grant an exception to any of the requirements of subsections 1 through 4 of the section. So ultimately, according to Idaho law, even though the prosecution is ordering law, citing law in their motion to keep Cy Ray from taking the stand to provide an alibi for Bryan Kohberger, now he can say other things on the stand, but they want Bryan Kohberger to get on the stand if he wants to provide an alibi. So we'll see what the court decides on this. We hopefully will know more on April 9th. So let me take this down and grab the next thing. Photos. Let's just add Maddie back. I'm just really curious of where you guys are at on that. Let me look at the poll for a second. If we have 1s or 2s. Deb says he has no alibi. Hey, Bob, it's good to see you. 06 says BK's phone was shut off. Nobody, even Cy Ray, can tell where he was. Prosecution is saying it'll ultimately be up to the judge to decide. Michelle says, truth, truth, truth. We will find out. Kate said, hi, everyone. I'm new to the group watching from Chicago. Mark Oliver thinks he is being framed. Grunger says, go for it. 4th down. He can't say where BK was. Just the phone, maybe. Yeah, please give us a thumbs up. Welcome from Indiana. Let me see. So we have a 2. So then we have a 1. Dabs, thanks so much for modding. We have a 2, a 2, a 2. Yeah. Oh, thanks for hitting the thumbs up, Bob. Okay, so you're number 97. Top Cat says number 2. And Josh says 2. Go for it. On the 4th, Dawn says, so the phone data doesn't exist, but needs the PR of this case. Maria says, so Bethany saw him too. Bethany saw a perpetrator. Yeah, I shared with you guys the receipts on this. Bethany saw someone, and the Ann Taylor's private investigator initially was subpoenaing Bethany to come back to Idaho. This was before they found out, the defense team found out that the prosecution had gone ahead and gotten a grand jury to indict him, and they thought they were going forward with a preliminary hearing in the case. And Bethany saw, and Ann Taylor did ultimately get to interview Bethany, or her private investigator did, the defense team private investigator. And then after hearing what Bethany had to say, and she then tried to file a motion to suppress Bethany from being able to take the stand to just say what she saw. And ultimately, the judge in the case ruled against her. Bethany ruled against the defense team, and Bethany will take the stand. So, yeah. And I went through that on a prior live stream like a week ago, I think. Veronica says 2. Midwest says 2. Mark Oliver said the DoorDash slasher did it. Then why haven't they been charged? Because I would think they would have been, in my opinion, they would have been one of the first people to be looked at and ruled in and ruled out. Jackson says 2. Tabby says 1. Brother Mike says 1. Pam says 2. Donna says 2. Michelle says 1. Brian R says 2. Sujoy says 2. Zio6 says Cyray can't tell if his phone was off. Neither could anyone else. Well, the prosecution is saying that they can. So I guess we'll see what the judge decides on this. Is Ann Taylor a court-appointed attorney? Yes, she is, Donna. She is appointed. Hi, Pam. Go for it says, you're right, his phone is not on him. Mike says his phone pings at 4:48 near the Blaine. He needed the map. Yeah, I think so too. Michelle says she believes so. And just says, I have missed anyone, but welcome. She's welcoming everyone. Christine says 2. Mrs. B says 2. All right, so we have a pretty good consensus. Deb says 2. Laura says 2. Vixar says Ann Taylor is playing games. She knows about the 7-day retention, and instead of dropping Cyray, she knows it will look bad, so she let Cyray take the fall so the judge can claim not a credible expert. Now, I think Cyray is credible. I just want to, just put that out there, and I'm not disagreeing with what you just think the judge is going to rule. I don't know. But I do think he is credible. Now, in the past, Cyray has testified in multiple cases. Now, on this particular case, I don't know, according to Idaho law, which is what the prosecution is arguing, and ultimately it does say that the judge does get to decide. But according to Idaho law, is this a real alibi? Is driving around in the car really a real alibi? If your phone is turned off during the times of the crime, it doesn't mean Cyray can't come up and testify to other things, but can he testify to an alibi? And that's ultimately what the judge will get to decide on. Green Eye says the defense has now gone into the camp of completely ridiculous. Greetings from North Carolina. Mike says into the break, his car and camera, his DNA under the victim. Bob says my IQ depends on my mood for that specific day. Barbara thinks it's a 2. Barbara thinks it's a 1. Okay. I got 2 from Barbara. Okay. Bob thinks it's a 1. All right. Grunger thinks he's guilty. Into the break says Brian Carr wasn't on any camera near King Road. Well, that's not true. I heard he showed the receipts on that. Please go back and watch some of my other live streams if you haven't seen it, but that's just not true. Somebody has been misleading you. All right, let's go through the next part. We're going to talk about the unknown male DNA found at the crime scene. We're going to talk about the Tinder warrant and the search warrants. And does Bryan Kohberger have intellectual difficulties? So the lead detective in the case, that's Moscow Police Detective Corporal Brett Payne, said he didn't hear Bryan Kohberger's name mentioned until December 19th of 2022. So this was more than a month after the crimes were committed. And he said that was the result of the IGG, that's the investigative genetic genealogy that was undertaken by the FBI. This is what he stated under oath. He said that we had a phone call that evening. We were told Bryan Kohberger's name. So again, law enforcement did not know Bryan Kohberger's name until December 19th. So they did request cell phone records from AT&T, but they were well outside of AT&T's 7-day window for the November 13th of 2022. They were over a month outside of the crime, so well past the 7-day window. They did ultimately get the records, but they didn't get them until 2023, and those were turned over to Ann Taylor and the defense team. So let's talk about the unknown male DNA that was found outside the 1122 King Road house. First of all, we have the DNA on the glove. This glove was found just 2 weeks after the crimes, and it was found outside the 1122 King Road house. So 2 weeks later, I don't think the glove is going to be relevant, because I think anyone at that point could have dropped the glove from a garbage man to a journalist to a student coming by to pay respects to one of the victims, to CSI personnel or law enforcement who was working the case. But there still is that unknown male DNA that was found inside the 1122 King Road house. And many people have wondered why Bryan Kohberger's DNA was identified, but not the male DNA found on the banister leading from the first floor to the second floor. So for answers, let's return back to the closed door hearing transcripts that were released by the Ada County judge. We're just calling him Judge Hip, because when I say his full name, people think I'm talking about the algorithm thinks I'm discussing a dictator from the 1930s, 1940s who started a world war. So according to Ryland Nolan, only one person's DNA was detected on the knife sheath. DNA testing all parts of the knife sheath. They tested the whole thing, and they detected a single source. The Idaho State Forensics Lab tested samples from the knife and for touch DNA, which can come in the form of skin cells that are shed upon being touched. Now, the analysts swabbed the entire portion of the strap, both the top and the bottom and the underside of the button. This is what Nolan testified to. And we didn't get to hear this testimony, but we did get to see the transcripts from it. And she did not swab the top of the button because it was determined to be the most likely place for fingerprints to be found. So they checked the top for the thing. So this unknown male DNA that was found on the banister leading from, and we're going to talk about the Tinder warrant and connections to Bryan Kohberger, Maddie and Kaylee, and the search warrants in just a minute. But the unknown male DNA does remain a mystery. It has been a mystery in this case. We don't know who it belongs to. We know it was male, but we don't know who it was belonged to. Now, I think this is something that Ann Taylor is going to be able to use in her defense. But the defense did ask Officer Brett Paynes why authorities didn't immediately search for the identity of unknown male B. And I think this is a fair question. They asked, why did you not pursue this person? This is Ann Taylor doing the questioning. At that point in time, we already had received Mr. Kohberger's name, is how the detective responded to her. And the detective continued. And from that, my understanding was entering another DNA profile into CODIS would remove the previous one we had from the knife sheath. So what is CODIS? CODIS is the National Combined, stands for Combined DNA Index System, which includes DNA profiles from convicted offenders, unsolved crime scene evidence, and missing people. Officer Brett Paynes also stated, so if memory serves, the discussion was, we'll hold off, we'll stay with the one from the knife sheath. If we need to, we can address unknown male B at a later date. So we don't know at this point in time whether or not this unknown male DNA was ever tested by law enforcement. We do know that there was a party at 1122 King Road the night before these crimes were committed on November the 11th. And of course, the crimes were committed the overnight of November 12th into the wee hours of November 13th. They actually occurred on November 13th. So the DNA could have been there for hours, could have been there for days, it could have been there for weeks. This was a party house with a lot of people coming and going. So let's talk about Tinder. Let me pull this down and grab this instead. Okay, so I just want to show receipts that Bryan Kohberger was on Tinder. So we'll start with that. I'm going to set the table and then we'll dig into everything. So this is proof that Bryan Kohberger was on Tinder. We have an account from somebody who went on a date with him. This woman, and then my sourcing on this is Newsweek, a woman detailed. So this is just me setting the table, showing you that Bryan Kohberger was indeed on Tinder. So they went to the movies. She went with him. She matched with him on the dating app Tinder. She said, we matched on Tinder. We talked for a couple of hours. And then he was like, hey, do you want to go to the movies with me tonight? I was like, sure. So we went to the movies. She said the date took place about 7 hours ago. I don't know what that can't be right. But she said I think it was probably seven hours. But her contact with Bryan Kohberger was very brief, lasting no more than 24 hours. So she took down her TikTok, and I don't know if she took it down because she's going to testify for the state, just to again for them to set the table that he was on Tinder. The woman said she did not recall the movie that they saw, but she remembered that she and BK ended up at her dorm afterwards. BK, quote, invited himself inside, according to her, and wanted to watch another movie on Netflix. She said, quote, he kept trying to touch me, not inappropriately, just trying to tickle and like rub my shoulders and stuff, she said. And she said, I was like, why are you touching me? What are you doing? And that prompted Kohberger, according to her, to get, quote, super serious. She said, quote, he's like, I'm not, and I'm like, you are. And he's like, I'm not touching you. Kind of like trying to gaslight me into thinking he didn't touch me, which is weird. The woman said she then told Kohberger she was going to the shared bathroom in her dorm and that he followed her there. She said he didn't go in with me, but he stood outside the door like, I don't know. I just thought that was weird. In an effort to get him to leave, she claims that she pretended to throw up, not because she was afraid of him. I wasn't scared of him. It wasn't because I was scared of him or like I thought he would hurt me if I asked him to leave. It was just mostly because I'm socially awkward. I didn't know how to ask him to leave. She then said that he sent her a message on Tinder saying that he was leaving. And she thought, awesome, my plan worked. And then an hour later, he texted me and said I had good birthing hips. So I never talked to him again. Okay, so that I just wanted to use that to set the table to show you that BK had indeed been on Tinder. So let me grab this one. Okay, my sourcing on this is the Daily Mail. And so let's talk about the warrants. And we notice that the warrants include Tinder. So I just wanted to show you the receipts on that. Tinder is included as one of the warrants. If you're just joining me, come on in. Tell me where you're from. We are talking about the Bryan Kohberger case and more connections to the victims. So more than 60 warrants were issued to companies while police investigated BK. The companies on the list were Amazon. We now know that BK purchased the K-Bar knife, the K-Bar knife sheath, and a knife sharpener, all on Amazon. And after the crimes were committed, he went back onto Amazon, according to the prosecution, and did more searches for another K-Bar knife. And profiler Pat Brown pointed out that the jury is going to want to know, what happened to your knife? What happened to your knife? So DoorDash, we know that they would have wanted to verify the times to be able to help establish a timeline for the jury. The DoorDash driver has been ruled out by law enforcement. And if they wanted to just frame someone, that would have been the perfect person to frame, right? The Meta. So Meta is the parent of Facebook. It's also the parent company of Instagram. And I have shown you receipts that Bryan Kohberger was following Kaylee and Maddie on Instagram. Reddit. I believe this is related to the inside looking account. And I believe that the Meta warrant may also be related to the Papa Rogers account, but I don't know for sure. For sure, I think it's going to show the Instagram. And then Tinder. So today we're going to be talking about Tinder. And if you haven't seen my other videos on the warrants, I've gone through everything. So among the 750 pages of documents are warrants for more than 60 companies, including Tinder, Verizon, Reddit, Amazon, Match Group. Now Match owns Tinder, and Meta, which Meta is the parent company for Instagram and Facebook. Early on in the case, internet sleuths claimed they found a Reddit account made accurate predictions about the case. This is the inside looking account. This is before the information was released publicly. He also used survey to conduct a study of criminal decision making. I don't find that to be particularly alarming. I think it may come up as like just another thing that the prosecution can show at the case trial, but because he was a criminology major, I wouldn't put a whole lot of weight into that on its own. But the documents under the gag order contain highly intimate facts or statements that would be objectionable to a reasonable party, the judge said. The documents were sealed due to the fact that it might threaten the safety or endanger the life or safety of individuals. There are some whack jobs out there. So the Goncalves family attorney, this is Kaylee's parents, Christy and Steve's, Shannon Gray, filed an appeal against the gag order. Now, the gag order was put in place by the defense team to protect Bryan Kohberger's right to a fair trial. He called it facially overly broad and vague and unconstitutional, claiming it violated their rights as, they're parents of the victims, to free speech. As an attorney for one of the victim families, I'm allowed to relay to the media any of the opinions, views, or statements by those family members regarding any part of the case. But Ann Taylor filed an objection to the appeal, saying it doesn't violate First Amendment rights and it's not facially vague. And I just wanted to show that because I have so many people coming in saying that it's the prosecution is being super secret, because Ann Taylor has, used the words super secret, giant secret, big secret in the last hearing, I think like 20 times, maybe more. In when she was characterizing it. And I think the judge in this case just felt frustrated with the whole thing, which is why he said the prosecution and defense can redact what they want to, but I'm going to make these motions public now. So I just wanted to just show you the receipts that there is a Tinder warrant, and also show you that it was actually the defense team that put this in place, put this the gag order in place. It was not the prosecution. All right, let me grab the next one. Okay. That's the one I just did. Hold on. I'm on this one now. All right. So for the people who are saying that there's no evidence in this case, there is evidence. I'm sorry if someone has misled you, but there is evidence. It was under a gag order, but there is evidence. And my sourcing on this is Newsweek. So let me just scroll down. So we have prosecution evidence includes records from Dick's Sporting Goods store in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is the relevance of this information, according to the prosecution filing, is that Bryan Kohberger purchased a black balaclava from Dick's Sporting Goods on January 10th of 2022. So I think, what we did not see a black ski mask listed in the affidavit. So, I'm wondering, did he get rid of it? Did he still have it? But I think the relevance of this in and of itself, by itself, it doesn't really help, but it does help bolster Dylan's account of seeing a man dressed all in black wearing a black mask. And for law enforcement, she drew the balaclava mask. So she says she saw a slim white male with bushy eyebrows wearing a balaclava or ski mask. So prosecutors want to show video footage from Floyd's medical, I'm just going to use that word, company, showing BK driving to a crime scene from his student apartment in Pullman, Washington. So they have him on multiple CCTV cameras, and Ann Taylor has filed motions in an effort to prevent the jury from seeing any of these CCTV cameras. Her argument is that the CCTV cameras weren't continuous, which is, of course, they're not continuous. Nobody knew he was going to commit this crime, so they didn't have a drone filming the Hyundai Elantra coming from Pullman, Washington, down to Albrightsville. I'm sorry, from Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho. So, of course, it's going to be different CCTV and doorbell cam footage that law enforcement was able to glean. So she said, but the state is going to rely on this. I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell that the judge is going to keep out the video footage. But we'll see what he decides. But let's talk about all the videos there are of BK. So they want to show this video footage from Floyd's. Then there's, I think, 10 different cameras that Ann Taylor does not want the jury to see. A video camera at the Sunset Mart convenience store in Moscow supposedly captures BK driving to and from the crime scene. The store is a half-mile from the 1122 King Road home. My source on this is Newsweek. Quote, the state may rely on video footage around 3:28 a.m. showing the suspect vehicle in the area of the crime scene prior to the victims being done away with. I'm going to watch my words here, according to the prosecution document. It also has video footage from the same mart at 5:25 as Kohberger was allegedly fleeing the crime scene. And we know from the affidavit but from the motions and the cameras that BK took a detoured route, probably to and from, but definitely from the crime scene after. And I believe this is why he had to switch on his phone, which used AT&T service. And the reason Ann Taylor is trying to make a big deal about not letting BK's AT&T footage go before the jury, if it really exonerated him, she would want the jury to see this. But the reason she does not want the jury to see this AT&T footage is because that cell phone pinged off of a cell phone tower just before his VPN clicked in. And I think he thought because he had VPN on there, he was okay. But I think on the way back, he was probably had his adrenaline going. He was tired. He was out of breath. And I think that he did a detour back these backcountry roads, trying to avoid cameras and also to, help be able to say he was out stargazing on that foggy, overcast ice fog night. But if Ann Taylor had really had video footage that helped Bryan Kohberger, she would want the jury to see it, but she doesn't. She's trying actively to prevent the jury from seeing any of the video footage that law enforcement got. I think the judge is not going to rule in her favor, but I admire her efforts to keep the evidence out. So prosecutors want to introduce the videos from Moscow showing the two victims, Kaylee and Maddie, socializing in the hours before they returned home. Now, we don't know why they want to show this, but it shows surveillance footage of the Corner Club at 10:20 p.m. to 1:37 a.m. and then Cafe Arista video at 1:40 a.m. and the Bagel Shop surveillance video from 1:40 to 2 a.m. In my opinion, they're going to do this in an effort to show a timeline of when the victims got home, but I don't know if anybody else will be picked up on that video footage. The morning after, prosecutors want to introduce video footage from the Costco Clarkston, Washington at about 11:59 a.m. on November 30th to show the defendant's vehicle and actions hours after the crimes were committed, hours after Ethan, Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana were done away with. So why are they so interested in what was going on at Costco and what was going on at Albertsons all the way down in Clarkston? As I shared with you during our last live stream, I believe that BK was down there purchasing things, maybe some bleach items, some items to clean the car. And I think that's one. Number two, I think law enforcement is going to prove with video footage of him getting in and out of that vehicle at the Albertsons and Costco, it will show that it was BK driving that particular Hyundai Elantra. And I believe that they are going to use that to help identify him as the driver of the vehicle going to and from the crime scene. And I think they're also going to show what his purchases were. So the prosecutors also want to introduce BK's driver's license to show that he could drive a car, and also to show his likeness, and how, again, this bolsters Dylan Mortensen's testimony, because it says here his height is 6 feet tall, and she said the person that did this was 6 feet tall or taller. I think these are bushy eyebrows. Let me know what you think. I think to a young woman, and I'm a female too, I think that if you could only see someone's eyes and eyebrows, you would describe those as bushy eyebrows. So I think that this does help establish it, and we'll see what the jury decides. So in March, prosecutors introduced a selfie photograph that BK took in front of the shower. And we did see a shower curtain there in the background. I had so many people last year when I said that I thought it was weird that he didn't have a shower curtain when he goes on vacation, because who packs a shower curtain to go on vacation to take to their parents' house? And I thought he disposed of it. A lot of people say that lots of people don't have a shower curtain, but I showed you the selfie, and in the selfie, you can clearly see that there is a shower curtain behind him. So it was taken down. Again, each thing by itself isn't going to, be enough, but I think this is a circumstantial case, and I think things are starting to add up, in my opinion, for the prosecution. So the prosecution is claiming that everything on their latest list is self-authenticating and does not need any foundational witness testimony to explain, for example, the nature of the video camera's recording. And I showed you the receipts that Ann Taylor admitted that it was Bryan Kohberger driving the car herself. She said it was Bryan's car. So she slipped up. All right, let's talk more about this Tinder warrant. And then we're going to talk about the search warrants. And then we're also going to be talking about BK's intellectual disabilities. According to Ann Taylor, she is claiming, and I'm just curious if you guys feel like she's, losing her own credibility, or not with this. But let's talk about the Tinder warrant. So I showed you proof that he was on Tinder. So I believe that Bryan Kohberger was on Tinder because the article and the weird date that he had. So I believe that she's probably going to take the stand and testify that he was on Tinder. So was Bryan Kohberger also attempting to interact with Kaylee and Maddie on Tinder? Well, Kaylee and Jack Decor had broken up. However, Maddie did have a boyfriend. His name was Jake, is still Jake, but both of the young women lived only 15 minutes from Bryan Kohberger. And we know Kaylee used to work at the Mad Greek restaurant, and Maddie and Xana were currently working at the Mad Greek at the time of these crimes. So Kaylee posted that iconic photograph of her holding Maddie on her shoulders. You guys know which one I'm talking about. Let me just pull it up. If you don't, let me just type in Idaho for it. It usually is like one of the first ones that comes up. This was posted just hours before she was done away with. And you can see the roommates are on either side, but you can clearly see this was posted on Instagram just hours before she was done away with. And I believe this is why law enforcement did get the search warrant for Meta, which is the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, because I believe they're going to show what I showed you, which is that BK was following Maddie and Kaylee on Instagram. And I showed you not only multiple sources, journalistic sources, this is a journalistic channel showing that, but I also showed you research that proved that he was following the victims on Instagram. That was done by Shadow Dragon. So let's keep going. I do want to we're not done, but I just do want to, before I get any further into this, I do just want to take a moment to say thank you to our producers, Njaz, Sasha Angel, George Brown, Pepper, and Lisa Fazio. And thank you to our channel members. We're not done, because we're going to talk about the Tinder warrants next. And then we're going to dig into intellectual disabilities. Did Bryan Kohberger really have intellectual disabilities? And we're also going to be talking about the DoorDash driver. So we're going to talk about the DoorDash driver too, because there's been a lot of things attributed to the DoorDash driver. There's a lot of suspicion around the DoorDash driver. So we're going to talk about that next. But let's do Tinder first. I just do want to say thank you to our channel members. If you want your name to appear just like this in all of my videos and live streams, you can hit the join button, which is next to the subscribe button. But if you subscribe, that helps me out too. And I just want to do super thanks and coffee gratitude to everybody. Thank you so much for your kindness and your generosity. And thank you to NJAS who gifted channel memberships. Okay, so let's dig into the Tinder stuff. Thank you so much, NJAS, for the gifted Reporter Room membership. NJAS has been gifting memberships almost every single live stream that we've been doing. Thank you, Brother Mike, for the $1.99 super sticker. That is so kind and generous of you. Thank you to Deb for being a channel member. Welcome. I'm glad to have you as part of the Reporter Room family. Thank you, Green Eyes Sparkle. She says, I love your channel, Jessica. Thank you so much, Green Eyes Sparkle. I really appreciate your $9.99 super sticker. That's so nice of you. And thank you, Kami, for the $2 super sticker. I really, really appreciate you guys so very much. Thank you. So let's continue on with this. Let's talk about Tinder. I'm going to put it. So please stay with. Okay. Let's talk about Tinder. Let me move myself over here. Okay, I don't want to block Maddie. All right, so we're going to talk about Tinder, and then we're going to talk about the search warrants. We're going to talk about BK's alleged intellectual disabilities, and we're going to talk about the DoorDash driver. So I showed you the Newsweek article proving that Bryan Kohberger was on Tinder. We also know that Bryan Kohberger was attempting to interact with Kaylee and Maddie on Tinder. Kaylee had broken up with Jack DeCour, so she was single. So did he see that iconic photograph that I just showed you of the Idaho students that were in that house? And did he realize that she was home for the weekend? Again, they only lived 15 minutes away from where Bryan Kohberger lived in Pullman, Washington. So was BK trying to connect with Kaylee Goncalves because he was also trying to become friends with who Maddie was friends with? So let's consider the Tinder warrants. On and around December 5th, law enforcement received data about Kaylee's account. Now their warrant went from January 1st of 2021 to the date of the crimes. Or through December 5th, which is around when they asked that. On or around December the 6th, law enforcement also requested info about 19 Tinder IDs. And I shared with you that Bryan Kohberger had 2 cell phones and multiple email addresses. And I don't know how many of these Tinder IDs, but they requested 19 from the November 11th of 2022 to the present, which would have been 12/6 of 2022. So on December 7th, they received data from Maddie's account from January 1st of 2021 to the December 7th date when they put in for the request. On December 22nd, law enforcement requested info on 18 Tinder IDs from March 1st of 2021 until March 31st of 2021. And we believe that this was probably linked to either Maddie's or Kaylee's Tinder account. On January 5th of 2023, law enforcement also requested not requested, but put in a warrant for Bryan Kohberger's Tinder information. So let me take Maddie down. Okay. So law enforcement did a very thorough job. And as I shared with you guys last time, I wondered, so sorry, I'm sick, you guys, but I am here. Oh, They're not letting me share this. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, let me go to plan B. Okay, let's go here. All right. That's frustrating. That was the Idaho Statesman. Okay. So prosecutors want to introduce these videos that I shared with you about the movements of Maddie and Kaylee. And they also want to talk about the doorbell camera ring. So we're going to talk about Ann Taylor's motion. Let me move myself out of the way. But let's finish talking about Tinder. So those are the Tinder warrants. And I do think that the prosecution and law enforcement have collected the data, because I do think the fact that they have all of these IDs and that they requested Bryan Kohberger's Tinder information on January 25th of 2023 through a warrant, that they are connecting Bryan Kohberger to Maddie and Kaylee. So let's talk about the intellectual disabilities that Bryan Kohberger's attorneys are now trying, because they want to remove capital punishment as an option. And I want to go through, let me see what. Okay, so now I want to go through this motion filed by, let me see who signed it. Let me see. This has got a lot of good stuff. It is signed by Ann Taylor. Okay, so Ann Taylor filed this. So this is her motion that she filed, wanting, this is in the state's response to motion in limine, vague and undisclosed expert testimony. So they're talking about Cy Ray here, filed with the court on March 17th of 2025. The Latah County began prosecuting Mr. Kohberger in December of 2022. And we know specifically it was December 19th when they identified him as a suspect. So I don't think they began prosecuting him because he wasn't arrested until December 30th. But she says December of 2022. So yeah, the very end of December of 2022, he was arrested. So but I don't know if they would have begun prosecuting. But discovery was filtered to Mr. Kohberger in a slow, disorganized, and tedious fashion. So first, Ann Taylor claimed that everything was super secret and the state wasn't turning everything over to her. But I just wanted to show you that there is evidence in this case, because in this motion, Ann Taylor's claiming that there's too much information, that she has too much, 68 terabytes of information. If you think about how much storage your computer has, does it have a half a terabyte, a whole terabyte? 68 terabytes is a lot of information to go through. And remember, she's filed a motion to try to keep the jury from seeing the videos of what's being purported to be Bryan Kohberger driving that Hyundai Elantra to and from the crime scene, stating that she doesn't have time to go through the 12 hours of raw footage, to look at 12 hours of video footage, that it's just too much. So now we've gone from everything super secret, which it was, because Ann Taylor and the defense team filed that motion that was supported and enacted by Latah County Judge John Judge to protect Bryan Kohberger's right to a fair trial. And then she also was claiming that the prosecution wasn't turning over everything. Now she's saying she has too much. So is she looking for another extension? But I just did want to show this because it does show that there is evidence in this case. And I feel like some of you guys have been misled, where people just read the defense motion and aren't reading the prosecution. So this is a defense motion. This is Ann Taylor saying this. So she says, hundreds of law enforcement officers assisted in the case, accessing and investigating with law enforcement experts meant that the prosecutors did not have to filter through 68 terabytes of information to be sure the right information was at the fingertips of the expert. The reality and gravity of 68 terabytes of information cannot be overstated. I agree. I think it's a lot to go through, and which is why she was granted a delay. She was great. She asked for a delay because she said she needed time to go over everything. She thought she could be ready in the summer of 2025. And John Judge said, that's fine. Now, this new judge in Ada County, he's holding to that date. But Ann Taylor, I don't know if she's looking for an extension, but I just did want to show you guys the receipts that there is evidence. So she said, Mr. Kohberger's capital defense team has spent over 2 years devouring as much data as possible. The team has not completed review. His team does not have hundreds of people to locate and talk to people about various pieces of information contained in discovery. The state does. Well, I think this could be said of any trial, right? The state has more resources than the defendant does. I think we could say this was true in the Lori Vallow case. We could say this was true in the O.J. Simpson case. We could, well, maybe not. O.J. had a lot of private attorneys. We could say it was true, anytime somebody has a public defender. But Mr. Kohberger is protected by the U.S. Constitution and the Constitution of Idaho. He has a right to a fair trial, to have effective assistance of counsel, to confront evidence against him. He has the right not to be convicted unless the state proves its case beyond a reasonable doubt. The state bears the burden of proof. The state has ethical duties under the Constitution, criminal and evidentiary rules, orders, and of this court to disclose expert opinion and what it would rely on in its case against Bryan Kohberger. And I think they have provided her with that. In my opinion, let me know what you think. If you have a different opinion, let me know in the comment section below. Instead, the state provided vague, loose topic area responses for those experts they had closely worked with. These same experts have been working with the state since the beginning of the case. The state's disclosure were for the most part abysmal since it relates to 67 electronic devices and third-party warrant returns. The state has not disclosed any expert opinions or disclosures of what it intends to rely on. Now, this is according to Ann Taylor. So I say take this with a pinch of salt. Remember, the prosecution is going to frame things in the best way to the prosecution. The defense is going to say things that, best benefit the defense. But it does show that there is evidence. So for people saying there's no evidence, she's saying that there's so much evidence, she's struggling to go through it all. The state's disclosures can only be described as sandbagging. In many cases, it appears that the state's initial disclosures resembled a laundry list of topics, and then once Mr. Kohberger complied with the court order, the state took advantage of learning a great deal about Mr. Kohberger's experts and evidence and tailored new disclosures to address Mr. Kohberger's experts. These are not rebuttal disclosures. Well, of course, they're going to definitely tailor their, whatever they're going to definitely rebut. I disagree. I think that these are rebuttal disclosures, but ultimately we'll see what the judge decides. But Ann Taylor saying these are state in chief. Numerous examples are laid out in detail. Exhibit 1. One example is the state's Amazon expert Cox. A second and more extreme example is FBI SA Balance. Many of these experts' disclosures are based on evidence and data that has not been disclosed to Mr. Kohberger. And this is particularly true of SA Balance, whose ever-changing reports and opinions are based on material that has not been provided to Mr. Kohberger. Well, my pushback on this is maybe you just haven't gone through it all yet. Remember, the state is only a few weeks ahead of the defense on going through all of the evidence. But do they have more resources? Probably. To assist the court, Mr. Kohberger appends Exhibit 1 to this motion as a guide to the chronology of the disclosures and lack of detail. It identifies each expert and limits of the disclosure. The state cannot be allowed to benefit from what they have done. Mr. Kohberger, recognizing what the state was doing, filed a motion to compel disclosures and motion to extend his deadline. So she wants to extend. His motion to extend the disclosure deadline was denied. During his motion to compel, this court expressed intent to apply the rules of disclosure were not properly made. So now she's saying the judge isn't proper. I don't think he's going to like this motion. The judge, we'll see what he says. The state then, with the advantage of Mr. Kohberger's expert disclosures, has continued to trickle new opinions to the defense. So what she's saying is, now that they are finding out what Mr. Kohberger's experts are disclosing, that they're trickling new opinions out to the defense team. Well, yeah, of course they're going to react to it. I mean, that's what the trial is, right? And when Ann Taylor's experts take the stand, then, in my opinion, they're definitely gonna come in and, try to try to object to that. I, I don't. I just am like starting to feel like uh, the evidence. But to people who've been in my comment section saying there was no evidence of Bryan Kohberger, there is evidence. There is evidence. Let me just pull this up. Hold on one second. So there's a lot of evidence against him. Now, he is innocent until proven guilty, but let's just talk about what we know so far. We have the purchase of a black balaclava ski mask. By itself, it doesn't mean very much, but it's the same type of mask that was described by Dylan Mortensen. They have the essay where he literally wrote a how-to show defendants how-to essay on how to keep from transferring DNA, and it shows BK had a knowledge of crime scenes and how not to transfer DNA and cross-contaminate. The prosecutors want to show video footage of this Hyundai Elantra going to the crime scene, coming back from the crime scene. And Ann Taylor doesn't want the jury to see that either. I believe that there's a couple where I believe it's going to definitively show that it is his Hyundai Elantra. And I think this is why they got the warrant for the Costco footage, in part to show him getting in and out of that particular car. And they're going to identify on several of the cameras that it is Bryan Kohberger in the car, either by showing the tag or something that definitively shows that it is his Hyundai Elantra, maybe him behind the wheel. We know they want to introduce video footage of Kaylee and Maddie socializing in the hour. So was he caught on any of those cameras? They want to put in his driver's license. They want to put in, they're saying they don't even need a foundational witness for all the video camera recordings that they want to bring into evidence. So I do feel, and now they have the receipts that he purchased the K-bar knife on Amazon, yet in their search warrants, they didn't find any sign of that K-bar knife. And, Pat Brown, criminal profiler, said, "Where's your knife? Why don't you have your knife?" All right, let's continue on. So now Ann Taylor is saying that Bryan Kohberger has intellectual disabilities. Let me pull that up. I'm just waiting for it to populate. And I'm just wondering what the judge is going to do with this, because does he have intellectual difficulties? Can you get a master's degree? So she's saying that Ann Taylor now wants to say that BK has autism. Now, she will not allow an independent person to verify this. The prosecution said it doesn't have to be our expert that exhibits him, but we want somebody independent to verify whether or not he has autism, because you can pay an expert. This is what profiler Pat Brown said. You can find an expert to testify to almost anything if you pay them enough. So does he have autism or doesn't he? But even if he does, which I don't think he does, but we'll see what the judge decides. It's not up to me to decide. But his attorneys, this is Ann Taylor, are saying that his autism diagnosis shares similarities with intellectual disability and exposes him to an unacceptable risk. This is Ann Taylor's characterization, that he'll be wrongfully convicted of doing away with, I'm watching my words, and sentenced to capital punishment. I'm watching my words. He faces 4 counts of doing away with Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Santa, and breaking and entering. So she's been trying and failing. And then my source on this is the Coeur de Leon Post Press. So Ann Taylor's been trying and failing to remove the capital punishment as an option. She has filed a slew of motions, including arguments that capital punishment is unconstitutional. Capital punishment breaks with evolving standards of decency. Capital punishment violates international law, and capital punishment is arbitrarily applied. But the judge who presides over Ada County, where the case was moved after Ann Taylor wanted a change of venue and the judge in Latah County granted it, he was not persuaded. He denied every one of Ann Taylor's requests to keep BK from being subject to capital punishment. So now the defense has turned to the U.S. Supreme Court case, Atkins versus Virginia, executing people with intellectual disabilities, which violates the Eighth Amendment regarding cruel and unusual punishment, the justices ruled. So she's arguing that the ruling should also apply to those with autism. It doesn't currently. I just want to prepare people mentally for the fact that he has a high IQ. He had a master's. He has a master's degree. He was working on a PhD. I don't know if he's going to fall into the category of somebody with intellectual disabilities. And the fact that she won't let an independent person verify whether or not he has autistic, I would think as a judge, I would want to know that. Because you can get, the prosecution put their expert on the stand and say he's a sociopath and psychopath. But, oh, wait, Ann Taylor doesn't want the jury to be allowed to hear those two words either. She doesn't want them to hear the M word, even though it's a capital case. She doesn't want them to hear the word sociopath. She doesn't want the jury to hear psychopath. She doesn't want the jury to hear the words bushy eyebrows. So she is trying everything. But she says, quote, Mr. Kohberger's autism spectrum disorder prevents him from being sentenced to capital punishment, I'm watching my words, in a manner that accords with constitutional requirements of proportionality and reliability. She wrote this in her motion to strike the DP. Attorneys for the defense and prosecution are scheduled to argue a litany of motions, including the defense's latest request to strike the DP at BK's next hearing, which is April the 9th. I'm going to be airing the hearing here on this channel if you want to watch it together as part of our true crime community here on Reporter Room. Despite opposition from the prosecution, BK's attorneys also asked the judge to allow expert testimony about their client's autism, along with diagnoses for obsessive compulsive disorder and developmental coordination disorder. Now, this developmental coordination disorder, as I shared with you during one of last week's live streams, goes back to when he was 4 years old. I don't think that dog is going to hunt. We'll see. But, I guess he had trouble tying his shoes when he was 4 years old or 5 years old. I didn't learn to tie my shoes till I was 5, so I don't know. But he certainly hasn't looked like he's had any, but it's supposed to be fine motor skills, and would, even if this does end up to be true and he has a developmental coordination disorder, he can tie his shoes now. He can button his shirt now. He can do small, fine motor skills. And even if he couldn't, would that prevent somebody from, stabby, doing away with somebody, multiple people? So we'll see what the judge decides on this. The prosecutors have clapped back, and they're saying in their response filing to the defense's arguments to strike the DP that it contradicts a precedent set not only by the Idaho Supreme Court, but also by the United States Supreme Court. They, quote, they failed entirely, end quote, this is prosecution saying this, to demonstrate any type of universal agreement that people on the autism spectrum should be barred from facing capital punishment. The filing added, quote, the only mental disability that precludes imposition of DP, capital punishment, I'm watching my words, is intellectual disability. This is according to brief signed by Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson and Special Assistant Attorney General. So this is the Special Assistant Attorney General, Jeff Nye. So 2 legal experts told the Idaho Statesman that absence of cognitive or mental deficits, the precedent set in the Atkins versus Virginia, won't likely be enough to take the DP, the capital punishment, off the table for Kohberger, although both didn't discount the challenges people with autism face in the legal system. Quote, there are aspects of autism that can cause potential issues in capital settings, in representation, and things like that. This is Colleen. Barry Essa from Rutgers University School of Criminal Justice. She's an associate professor. Barry Essa authored a toolkit which the defense cited in its filing to help the judges better understand defendants with autism. But she said in an interview that, quote, the actual application of Atkins in higher functioning autism cases is not something that people are talking about. I'm curious what you think the judge is going to decide on this. Do you think the judge is going to take the DP off the table due to the autism without an independent person verifying it or not? I'm just curious what you guys think about this. Come on in if you're just joining me. We're talking about the Bryan Kohberger case, digging into a lot of important information. I do want to say thank you to 12 Gauge, first time chatter. Enjoy it so far. Thank you, 12 Gauge. Then really appreciate your being here. Njaz gifted another reporter room membership. Wow. Thank you so much, Njaz. And if you got that reporter room membership, please make sure to let Njaz know. Give her a big reporter room thank you. Okay, so let's see what you guys have to say, and then we're going to dig into. I have so much stuff. We're going to talk about the DoorDash driver next, because a lot of people think this is somehow related to the DoorDash driver and that the DoorDash driver did it. That it wasn't Bryan Kohberger, the DoorDash driver did it. So let's see. Michelle says, okay, let me see. Mother of Cycle Breakers says, I agree. Most, not all of her motions to suppress will be denied. Of course, the pro-burgers will claim he's corrupt and in on the plan to frame Bryan Kohberger. DM says, the gag order gave me a completely different impression. I thought they might not have enough to convince him. A long time judge. We call him Judge Hip on this channel. Mike is reminding me that there is an ID. Let me pull that up, Mike. Because some people don't know. Let me pull that up. All right. So this is being characterized by Newsweek as smoking gun. Let me move myself out of the way here. But this is smoking gun evidence in the case. So let's talk about this for a second, and then we're going to get into the DoorDash driver. Let me close this one. Okay. All right. So my source on this is Newsweek, but we know that there was an ID that we saw in the affidavit that IDs were ID cards that were found inside a glove in a box in the search of Bryan Kohberger's parents' Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home. And I shared with you because one of the IDs is reportedly connected to someone in the home in the 1122 King Road house. And former FBI Jennifer Coffindaffer said there was no reason to explain why Bryan Kohberger would have an ID of the victim. I agree with her assessment. I think that if this turns out to be true, this will be more damaging than the receipts of him purchasing the K-bar knife, and maybe more damaging even than the DNA that was found on that knife sheath. And juries do love DNA. But how would an ID of one of the victims get all the way from Moscow, Idaho to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania? According to court documents, unsealed. So this is article is from the 2023, April of 2023. Part of what I do as a investigative journalist, it sounds like, wow, that's really exciting. But a lot of what I do is actually just research. I go through and dig through everything I can find, and then try to put the pieces together with new information that's come out in the last year. But we still have not heard anything about this in any of the motions yet. So according to court documents unsealed in 2023, ID cards found in a glove inside a box inside his parents' Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home connect back to the 1122 King Road evidence. Michael McAuliffe, who's a former federal prosecutor and elected state attorney, told Newsweek that any items connected to the crimes that were found in BK's parents' house, which is across the country from the crime scenes, would be significant. He characterized it as significant, even damning. He says the reports that IDs were hidden in a box or glove compartment could meet that standard, but we need to know the specifics. Why would he have any ID related back to the 1122 King Road house? How would those have gotten into his parents' Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home? He said the IDs were, quote, only generally described on the inventory list for the search. So the connection to the M, he uses the M word, I'm going to say crimes, the doing away with, is unclear. But the ID is for one of the victims. It would match the importance of the defendant's DNA evidence being found on the knife sheath next to one of the victims. It was underneath and to the side of Maddie. The potential information is tantalizing in its newsworthiness, but the gag order prevents it from being confirmed. Again, the gag order was put in place by the defense team to protect Bryan Kohberger's right to a fair trial. We all want him to have a fair trial. Eventually, the evidence will become public because the prosecutors have a burden to prove guilt in an open court before a jury. Neema Ramani is an attorney and a former federal prosecutor, and she agreed that the ID would be a smoking gun evidence if it belonged to someone who lived at the Moscow home. She told Newsweek, aside from the single source of DNA in the knife sheath at the scene and the cell site evidence, and I do think that the cell tower evidence is going to be combined with geofencing. I talked to you guys about that in past live streams, that I think they're going to line that up with geofencing, and they're going to be able to show that BK's AT&T cell phone was making a handshake with Kaylee's Bluetooth, and that's why her Apple Watch and her Apple laptop were not returned back to Steve and Christy Goncalves, along with and why other things were. But he says, aside from the single source of DNA and the knife sheath at the scene, the cell site evidence showing BK near the home before and after the crimes, the state hasn't revealed much evidence that ties BK to the house. Well, now we know they have at least 10 different videos of him on camera going to and from the crime scene, and that they could prove he purchased the K-bar knife on Amazon. Now, BK's defense team is going to argue that the DNA was planted or transferred, and the cell site evidence does not put BK at the scene when the crimes happened. It will be more difficult for the defense to explain an ID that was transported thousands of miles away and hidden in Bryan Kohberger's parents' home. The probable cause affidavit said that the DNA found from the knife sheath connected BK to the crimes through his DNA from his father. Now, that's not the DNA that's being introduced in the court. They are going to be introducing his cheek swab, his buccal cheek swab that was done with a court order after he was arrested. So I hope I've answered your query on that. Mike, let me grab this. Put Matt. Let me put Maddie up. If I can find her. All right, we'll put up Kohberger. Okay. Let me check in with chat, and then we're going to dig into the DoorDash driver, you guys. Grudger says there was an ID found inside a glove, inside a box, and I don't know if it was in the closet or not, but it was confiscated, and we don't yet know the importance. 12 Gauge says, thanks for coming to the channel as well. I'm taking some time off. I'll be back soon. Wicked says the ID was found in a glove inside a box at his parents' house. That's correct. And Callie Dime, you are got the Reporter Room channel membership from NJAS. Thank you so much, NJAS. Mike says autism, they forgot sociopathic, narcissistic, psychopath. Well, now Ann Taylor doesn't want them to be able to use the word sociopath or psychopath or the M word in a capital punishment case. Michelle said, it's me, Mike. That's what I remember seeing on the list that was found IDs in a box, not whose ID. Yeah, we don't know yet. We don't know yet. Sue Joy said, I believe Ann Taylor is going to get on Judge Hip's last nerve. We call him Judge Hip here just because of the way the word sounds to the algorithm when I try to say it. So I do think I don't think he's going to like some of the motions. We'll see what he does with it. I think he's going to push back. He pushed back against, I think he is a fair judge. I do think he's fair. I think, he pushed back really hard on both the prosecution and the defense. So we'll, in the last hearing, it was very, very interesting to watch. So I'm looking forward to it. Hey, Teresa. Dev says, I've seen the pullover vid. He isn't mentally challenged at all. No, he talked his way out of a ticket, right? And then when he got pulled over for tailgating with his dad in the car, and he said he was going for Thai food, not I'm going to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Z06 says, think the only way the DP will be removed is if they make a plea deal. I agree. And to get that done, let me know what you guys think about this. I don't think Bryan Kohberger is going to agree to a plea deal. Let me know. I don't know if the family members of the victims are going to agree to a plea deal. I'm curious what you guys think. Do you think that the family members would agree to a plea deal, yes or no? Let's see. Mike feels like they want to suppress the facts. ALTA and brother Mike says Ann Taylor likes to call him Brian. Hi, Marilyn and Sam. Patrick says she won't always get what she wants. Top Cat said we had a lot already, much more to come. Yeah, he graduated. I mean, he has a master's degree. So I think saying that he has intellectual disabilities is going to be an uphill battle. Christine said, yes, I would love for you to stream him in the court. I am. I'm going to stream him on April 9th. Teresa says a 2. ALR says those motions for all the words and then the new diagnosis was the biggest sign in motions for me. I don't believe he has any disorder. Donna says, I'm curious if BK was aware that Chris CP was, capital punishment was for Idaho. Yeah, well, that got changed, right? It went from lethal injection to they're trying to make firing squad the first choice in Idaho. So likely that's what he will face. Teresa says, hello. DM said, I can't believe the trial is finally happening this summer. It's going to be huge. Like OJ, Casey Anthony, Menendez brother, that type of huge. I agree. I think this is going to be one of the biggest trials of our lifetime. It's me, Mike says, going on a rampage is easier than tying a shoe, I'm sure. Alicia says the defense is throwing anything and everything at the wall, praying something sticks. Patrick thinks it's more of his attorney shenanigans. Mr. Broxy Bree says, I'm waiting for the he had hemorrhoids and was agitated excuse. Jennifer Bradley said, there is an issue if the defense does not want a neutral party to test him for any type of mental health needs, etc. I think if I were the judge and you really wanted to have capital punishment taken off the table, I think you're right. I think the judge would probably say, well, that's fine. Let's take it off the table. But I want to have an independent person, because you can tell someone with autism from somebody who has sociopathy. People with autism feel empathy and compassion. They have difficulty expressing it, and they have difficulty reading your expressions, your emotions. But that doesn't mean they don't feel it. And they've done imaging studies with MRIs and CT scans looking at how sociopathic and psychopathic people respond to certain images. They'll show them disturbing images combined with loving images and just see how the brain lights up. And they've seen that people with autism their brains do light up where we would expect someone's brain to light up that was feeling compassion or empathy or feeling very disturbed by certain images. In contrast, somebody with sociopathic or psychopathic tendencies, their brain does not light up in the same way as somebody with autism. So I think if Ann Taylor really wants to have a shot at this, I think she should have said, yes, let me know what you think if you have a different feeling, but why not let an independent person come in and verify that he is autistic to the court, which is what the prosecution is asking for. they want to know if he really is autistic or not. And they want an independent person, not a prosecution witness, just an independent person to verify it. But she said no, she doesn't want that to happen. So I don't know. And Brother Mike is pointing out that BK can run a mile in 6 minutes. Yeah, I agree. And we know that because of the Strava app, which I've also covered. If you haven't gone through my playlist, especially from 2023, January, February, March, January 2024 through today, there's a lot of really good information in my playlist here. John DM says, Donna Bravo, I don't know if people who do away with people even think about it. He must have been super confident. And just thinks BK has more than autism. Yeah, and I just want to be clear that somebody who is autistic is no more likely to commit a crime like this than a neurotypical person would. Oh, it is Autism Awareness Month too, you guys. Teresa said, does a car have a box that the police can track his movement? A lot of people have wondered this. I have not heard anything about GPS. However, BK had Strava on his phone. Let me pull that up. Which is an app that is better than GPS, and there is a warrant out for Strava. My computer's just thinking. Okay, let me see if I can pull this up. Take this down. Nope. Okay, let me share this one. All right, let me move myself out of the way. And I made it worse. There we go. Okay. So according to News Nation, BK's Strava data shows he's very fast. So he's not, Jennifer Coffindaffer is claiming that he's both coordinated and fast. Let me grab the Strava. And let me show you what this is. So what it is it's basically it's a Strava's trying to log me in. I just want to pull up what Strava is. Nope, still trying to log me in. Not interested in logging in with Strava. It tracks you. And BK did have Strava on his phone. Oh, I see why it's trying to get me to log in. Let me just... And I covered Strava last year in 2024. My computer is populating, but really, really slowly. Okay, so I just want to show you receipts that he was using the Strava app. Let me just pull this up. So I like to just show receipts. Yeah. Okay, so my sourcing on this is Court TV. All right. So this, I just wanted to just show you that the law enforcement did have a warrant for Strava. And you can see it right here, Strava. So investigators are probing activity from AT&T, Google, Reddit, Snap. So that's Snapchat and Snap Map, which also tracks you, and Strava. So what Strava is it's an app that is a fitness app that BK had on his phone. And it attracts you almost better than anything else you could be used to track you. It unlike a car GPS, which only tracks you when you're in the car, Strava is everywhere you carry your phone. So BK did have this app on his phone. He did show that he could run a 6-minute mile, and the Strava app is better because it's wherever you go as far as tracking people. It runs in the background. So even if BK had it in airplane mode, it would still run in the background. So I do think that's really significant. So I agree with that assessment. Let me put this back up. Darker hair, darker eyes. Okay. Let's dig into the DoorDash driver. I want to talk about that next. So a lot of people are, they impugned the integrity of the roommates, and then we had the 911 call came out, and it, pretty much it didn't. We still don't know why, like what they were doing on the phone. We still don't know what was going on in their heads. We do know that Dylan had over 10 drinks in her system, so she was drunk. She was really impaired, in my opinion. And the DoorDash driver was identified early on by law enforcement and ruled out. The car was seen in the area at 3:56 a.m. We know this vehicle turns around from Linda Lane footage and then goes back to the King Road house, meaning that that BK and the DoorDash driver passed each other. Allegedly, he's innocent until proven guilty. The driver of the white Hyundai Elantra. And so would they have seen each other? And would the perpetrator have known that the DoorDash driver made a delivery to the 1122 King Road house? Or from the perpetrator's point of view, was this just another car passing by? In my opinion, I don't think he knew that a delivery was made. I think he did think that people had gone to bed, which is why the perpetrator felt comfortable. But we'll find out at the trial because the DoorDash driver is going to take the stand. And now we have the defense team complaining because the state got a 6-week head start. And I think this is just another effort to try to delay the trial. Remember, she's now saying that, she didn't want Dylan and Bethany to be able to testify to what they saw because, it's been so long since they witnessed it and their memories would have faded. That's me paraphrasing her argument. And I think that was the purpose of the delay, right? The delay is BK's still in jail because he waived his right to a speedy trial. He had a right to be tried within 6 months. He waived his right to a speedy trial. And Ann Taylor has put in delay after delay after delay. And now she's saying that she doesn't have enough time to go through 68 terabytes of information to be sure that she has the right evidence, available for her experts, and that the reality and gravity of 68 terabytes of information cannot be overstated. So that's, the opposite of what she was saying prior to this, which was like, well, I need to delay because the prosecution's hiding evidence from me. They're withholding, it was all. Now she's taking the opposite and say, well, I have too much evidence to go through. In fact, judge, just imagine if the judge let this go through. Her argument is that because she's claiming she doesn't have time to go through 12 hours of raw video footage of the Hyundai Elantra car. From 12 hours of video footage is what the prosecution is going to be presenting. She says she doesn't have time to go through all that footage. And maybe the prosecution will cherry pick out. But imagine if they had just given her cherry picked images, then she would have claimed, in my opinion, that the prosecution only cherry picked out the images. But can you imagine any judge saying to a defendant, oh, you don't have time to go through the evidence? Well, that's okay. Then we won't present that evidence. That dog is not going to hunt, in my opinion, with Judge Hippler. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section below. And I am going over to do a live stream on the Sebastian Rogers case. So follow me over there. And if you have not subscribed to Reporter Room, it's free. Please subscribe and please join me in the top chat on April 9th when we air the Bryan Kohberger hearing. And again, thank you for being with me. And I do appreciate all of you guys taking a little bit of time out of your day to come by and spend some time with me. Thank you to our head mod, Njaz, and our other head mod, brother Mike. I'm like trying to see if I can find Mike really quick in the chat. I know he's in here. I don't see him where I'm like, it's like popping up. I saw him a few minutes ago. I don't see him right now. But thank you so much to all of our mods for modding today. And I do appreciate all of you guys who came by, no matter what you feel on this case. I do, I just, all I ask is for people to share their opinions and their thoughts respectfully with each other. And it's okay. We don't all have to agree, right? We're not going to all agree on every single case. You may agree or not agree on one case and with me, and you might agree on another one. But if you have not gone through my playlist on YouTube, that is also worth going through. I have made, I don't know, let me look. I have made over 100 videos on this case. I've been on it from the beginning. Let me see how many I've made. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so this is one of the playlists. Let me take this down, add this in. And let's see. There are tons going back to December 18th of 2022. I've been on this from the very, very beginning all the way up through now. And this is just 30 out of many. So and if you go through, I would say, like, if you were like trying to just pick out the best ones to go through, these are all the videos I've made. Some of the very best ones are the live streams that I did this year, but also last year, are definitely worth going through if you're trying to pick out some videos. If you want to be in the know, if you are a critical thinker and you like to have all of the information so you can make up your own mind, then this is the right channel for you. All right, so I will see you guys on the next one. But look for another Bryan Kohberger video later this week. Subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.